All right, well, thank you all for coming. We really mean that. You're here for the Army Corps Beach Restoration Program Plus, is the way I call it, and that'll be explained to you in the briefing. The first thing I want to say is, absolutely, this is a coordinated project with the city of Flagler Beach and the county, who I represent. I'm Dave Sullivan, chairman of the Board of County Commissioners for Flagler County, and I'm here just to ensure that the county is fully supportive of this project, and so is the city of Flagler Beach, and we hope all the residents of the county. Now, to ensure that, we have our vice chair, Joe Mullins is here, Commissioner Greg Hansen is here, Faith Akatib, and we'll go through the introductions, but we've got our staff, we've got our partners from the government here, from the federal government and the state. So it's a really important thing, and that's the point we want to make, that this is a very important project that we're going to do for the future of the whole county of Flagler, not just the people who live along the beach. Because the businesses will benefit from this, the environment, safety, security. It's a really win-win project. And I know sometimes, you know, there's a famous saying, old Ronald Reagan saying is, we're from the government and we're here to help you. That's a dangerous statement, but that's true today. We are from the government, and we do think this is a great project that will help everyone. As you know, the hurricanes affected all 18 miles of our coastline here in Flagler County. Some work has already been done on the northern 12 miles. We put down about 6 cubic feet of sand per foot for that 12 miles. But we haven't really done sand for the lower 6 miles. This particular project, the Army Corps project, is for the 2.6 miles right where we had the problem with A1A. So in the past couple of years, we've done the project to the north. A1A is now open in both directions. There's been some additional walls put in at the northern end of Flagler Beach. So it's time to do this beach restoration project, and that's what we're going to brief on today. So I just want to make sure I cover my points. This project is like 10 times the sand that was put on that northern part of the beach. And I'm going to turn the microphone over now to Al Hadid, our attorney, who's going to start the briefing. And then it's very important that those of you who are landowners along the coastline, especially on those small parcels on the east side of A1A, we're happy you're here, and we need your help to make this project come true. So with that, Al?
Thank you. It's really, I'm going to step out here a little bit. It's really an honor to address everybody. As I have said a number of times, this is the largest and most important undertaking in the history of Flagler County. This is to rebuild our beaches, to restore the rural ambiance and the iconic feel, the very unique feel of not just Flagler Beach, but of Flagler County. And so we very much appreciate that you're here. I don't know if you heard some of my earlier introductory. The restrooms are back there. There's food and refreshments toward the back. There'll be an opportunity to answer questions. That's the mic right there. People will line up. The title company is in the back in case you have any questions about your documents. And we have all of the officials here. They are all working an extended day, and we are all pledged to stay here until the last question is answered by any property owner. So this is why we're here. We're no longer immune from hurricanes. We thought that for many years, for decades, a century, until Hurricane Matthew disabused us of that notion to begin with. Irma reinforced it, and Dorian added the triple threat. We're no longer immune. We have threats to our historic road, threats to our dunes. Those of you who own these dunes, you're looking at you're looking at the potential future if we don't do something about our situation. Public safety severely at risk. So what are we going to do about the risk? How are we going to protect the dunes, the beaches, the community? Okay, that's why we're here. The dune project, the particular one we're talking about, is from South 6 down to South 28th. Mr. Sullivan has already given you the welcoming remarks. I'm going to make a presentation. Larry Newsom will follow me with any additional comments. You'll have the opportunity after we finish that to talk to any of the specialists, either by way of questions or directly, and then we'll adjourn after all the questions are answered. Okay, here's a lineup of our specialists. Those are all the folks from the county that are here. And by the way, including Suzanne Johnson, our tax collector. The Army Corps of Engineers is represented by Jason Hara, the project manager. They've been absolutely great partners. Actually, everybody on this list that I will show you, they've been incredible partners to this project. Olson Associates, they're our consulting engineers. They've done many of these projects before in Florida and beyond. The Florida Department of Transportation, oh my gosh, they've been an enormous help to us in terms of this dune project. We have a lot of thanks that we owe them. And let me just mention before I go to any more of the specialists, when you think about, I know you all have heard, you've gotten the materials from us, that this project is fully funded. It is because of the Army Corps of Engineers and the Florida Department of Transportation. And for some of you that are concerned about the flow of dollars, public dollars, I want to tell you that this is the way to look at it. We're getting back some of our federal and state tax dollars that we have been paying into and that have been going to urbanized areas. Now we're bringing some of those dollars back. So we're very keen on that. Of course, Coast Title, I mentioned them before. Sandra McDermott and her staff are back there to help. Jay Livingston, who is our title attorney, did all the title research on these to make sure that all the title stuff was clear. Okay, this is essentially the construction project that we're going to engage in. We're going to pump sand offshore. We'll show you a little bit more about that. It'll be pumped to the beach. You can see right there that it comes up kind of in a slurry. They mix seawater with it so that it can move through the pipes and get on the beach. There's the pipes that run north and south along the beach. Now I want you to notice something. Obviously this is the area of construction. This is the new beach. Look back there at the old beach. That's the difference. They'll be obviously moving it around. When the sand is put onto the beach, it's moved up in a way that the seawater, which was introduced into it to allow it to be pumped, goes back out to the ocean, and then the sun bleaches that sand. You can see right there more sign of that slurry. Okay, so where's the sand coming from? We're very fortunate. The United States Department of Interior has given us the right to take sand from this borrow site that's been identified 10 nautical miles offshore. Now why? Okay, so why is, first off, I know you can't tell about volume. This is a huge volume. This is a borrow pit that it's got, or it's not a borrow pit, but it is a huge amount of sand there. And why is it important? Because that sand was found to have the characteristics closest to our native sand. It doesn't have organics. So what does that mean? It doesn't stink. Organics decay and stink. So if you're used to the ocean upwellings and it stinks, it's because there's organic material in it. This sand that they're putting on the beach here doesn't have organics in it. That is a huge benefit to us. That is not always the case where they renourish in other parts of the state, just so you know. So the sand will be brought to the shore. Now, I want to show you the project area. This is the area that you own your property in, right there. This is south to the county line. In other words, it goes by Gamble Rogers and the condos there, some of the residences. And then this is north. The pier is, you can see where I think that's 100. So the pier is going to be out there, and the project's going to go north in a later phase. Our intention is to do the entire 18 miles of the beach, just so you're aware. We're hoping that we can use this borrow site to cover all of this area here with the sand that we've discussed. We decided to build the Army Corps project area first. There's the project limit. You already know that. Chairman Mr. Sullivan already told you that if you're familiar with what we did in the north 12 miles, where we rebuilt the beaches on an emergency basis, there'll be 10 times the volume of sand per lineal foot as we applied in the north 12 miles. The effect of this, just as you saw in that one photo in the montage there, the beach is going to be lengthened. It's going to actually extend out much farther than the way you see the beach today. It's going to taper into the surf. They're actually going to be depositing sand in the surf so as to accomplish that extension of the beach. The beach eventually, you think, well, how in the heck can that be? The beach goes through a natural process. They call it equilibration. I don't know if I said that exactly right. Oh, somebody said close and somebody said all right. So I guess that's like a B minus, right? Okay, so anyway, it'll equilibrate. And for those that are interested in the environment, there's a huge gain in the environmental habitat that's being created for sea turtles, shorebirds, and other species. They're going to be protected. Sea turtles and shorebirds will be protected during the dune building. The native vegetation is not just sand. I think you all know that from the materials we sent you. Native vegetation will be planted when the dunes are completed, and that is to stabilize the dunes and also to increase the environmental value of our beaches. The kind of materials that will be planted: sea oats, beach grasses, morning glory, dune sunflowers, and similar types of plants. And we heard some comments back, so we're not going to plant sea grape, because if we put the sea grape on at the top of the dune, you know, that there's a possibility that it's going to impair views. So none of this vegetation, nor the construction, by the way, is going to impair somebody's view shed looking out at the ocean. If you happen to be visiting or you own a house and you look out the first floor picture window out toward the beach, you're going to see an elongated beach, but your view is not going to be blocked. It's not going to be any different than the view you have today, except that it'll be a real beach. Okay, here's the cost. There isn't any, as you know from the materials, to the property owners. There's none to the citizens or businesses. It's fully funded. $17.5 million for your stretch. Now, a number actually, more than one, have asked, well, what about other costs? Now, that was addressed in the documents that we send you, but just let me review it. We're just not getting the money to build a beach. We're getting a limited warranty replacement because we've got the Army Corps of Engineers with a 50-year agreement. If we have a declared storm, you all know what that means. That's a storm. The President of the United States declares it as a disaster. And that frees up like FEMA and so forth. Well, what it also does, because we have this relationship with the Army Corps, they will repair any damage to the beach. They don't have to wait for FEMA. They don't have to get the typical permits in order to do the work. They will go in and repair the dune at no cost to anyone. Okay, so, well, that's declared storm. What about the other times? Well, there's maintenance. You have to maintain. You know, it's the right thing to do is to maintain what you've constructed. And so the city, they haven't signed the paperwork, but they're in the process of entering into an agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation in order to have funds annually so that they can maintain the beach. Now, there's also another part of the cycle that's called renourishment. It occurs about every 10, 11 years. It's based on the rate of erosion. The Army Corps predicts that it's going to be about a 10 to 11 year cycle. When that time comes, the Army Corps, when it makes that determination, okay, it's ready for renourishment, then they will pay 50% of that cost, and then we, that is the city and the county, will have to work with other grant funding agencies and other sources of revenue to essentially pay for the renourishment. but it's basically a 50-year plan. So by participating in this program, you get the benefit not just of creating property that you presently do not have, that is engineered, that is planted and stabilized. You'll have a 50-year life to that improvement. I don't know of any place you can get an advantage such as that. Now, we are working on funding for the other segments. Your segment is not going to be isolated. To the south of you, we have FDOT funds to do that work. That is south of 28th. We're also working with DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, to get funding to do Gamble Rogers, to rebuild the dunes in front of the Gamble Rogers State Park. North of South 6th Street, we also are getting funds from the Department of Transportation to restore those dunes. So we just want you to know. Oh, and then of course, there's the other 12 miles. Right now, we're actually working with FEMA to try to get funding to add more sand to the north 12 miles of Flagler County. But before we can begin this project, we absolutely have to have the permission of the property owners to do this work. Nobody can go and touch anything on your property unless we have your permission. So we need your permission. It's entirely voluntary. You're not compelled. You're gonna, if you agree, you're gonna have to sign an easement. You got the easement form. An easement is really, you know, it's a property right that allows the Army Corps, through your granting of an easement to us, to allow their contractors to do the work and complete the work, and also to do the ongoing maintenance and the recovery from the declared storms and the renourishment. It's actually an approval to go through that whole process. Now, it's not the same, but it's no different than if a utility company is going to do something near your property and you've got to grant them an easement, or there's something that's happening where there's an easement that has to be granted in order to allow the government or the private entity to do something. Here, we're asking permission to essentially do the work on the dunes. All the documents. Look, this, we can't, we were recently fully funded. We were fully funded December 2 of 2019. So we want to get going on this project. This isn't like, oh, you get a whole lot of time to think about it. We want to bid. We want to go out to bid. We want to get the hopper, the vessel that goes out to the site that mines the sand for us and brings it to shore. So we've got a deadline. We need to get these easements. We need to record them. We need to do it by March 25th. Of course, I want to say, while emphasizing that we have to move, we are perfectly willing to answer any and all questions you may have relative to this project, or what we're asking you to do, or what the implications are for you. I just want you to know, and you know that because we've given you on the materials we've sent you a phone number, an email address, and a website. So you have all the ways to contact us if you have any questions, and obviously any questions that may arise today. I've already mentioned Coast Title is here. They can deal with answering your questions, notarizing the documents, getting them recorded for you. They'll handle all of that, and that is at no cost to you. All the title work that's been done on your property in order to get to this point, that's been at no cost to you. Okay, so let's say, what happens? Suppose there's somebody that doesn't sign. Okay, this is how they have to engineer the slopes. So I'm just going to show you here. See that right there? That right there is A1A. There's the beach. There's the ocean. That's central. These are lots. So this property owner, let's say, they didn't sign. Well, it's not a cutout. They don't just cut it out. They taper it. What do you think that's going to do? That's going to hurt. So let's say you're one among these property owners that signed. You're not really going to get the full advantage of the dune. So it's very, very important that we get maximum participation. By the way, not just because of the impact on the neighbors. Think about it. We're building an armament, a form of armament which just has to happen to be in the form of an engineered sand dune beach. If it's continuous, it is going to have greater strength than if it's pockmarked with open spots. That just stands to reason, common sense. So you don't want this situation to occur for any reason. Now, we're going to allow you to know the progress of what we're doing. You're going to know what you've done and what your neighbors are doing. On our website, now it won't be split up like this, but this is your segment, 2.6 miles divided into two parts, north and south. And right now you see there's red and there's green. There's a lot of green here. I don't know if you can see the colors. There's a lot of green there. There's a lot of red there. That tells you who's signed in and who's out. You'll be able to click on. You'll be able to find your property. You'll be able to find your neighbor's property. You'll be able to find out who owns the property next to yours or 3 lots down from you. You'll be able to do that on this interactive map that is going to be on the website. So you'll be able to track its progress and to know how you might be affected in terms of what people are doing. Okay? And this is, it is dynamic, meaning it's always current. When an easement is recorded, boom, it's the little spot where it was red is going to turn to green. We're also going to give you a scorecard, so you know generally how many. Now, there have been easements that have come in, and today I had owners confirm with me that they are executing, and that will be a total of 7 more properties that will be added on the green bar. But that's where we are. We got 29 days to get 87. 94 minus 7, 87. My math right? At least that's still working. Okay, walkovers. A lot of issues about that. So I'm going to take a little bit of time here because we had the incident up in the north part of A1A. Okay, first off, with respect to the Army Corps portion, if you have a walkover presently or a deck, they're going to work around them using hand tools. It won't be the bulldozers coming up onto that portion of your property where you've got a walkover or a deck. The contractor, by contract, is going to be liable for any damage that they may cause to your structure. Your structures will be photographed prior to construction. In fact, there was an attempt to do some of that today. I don't know if it was too gray to do it. Too cloudy, huh?
It's still on the list to do.
Still on the list to do. So the weather wasn't that forgiving today. Okay, so what does it look like? Okay, so this is a walkover, and there's storm damage. You see that the dune has been pushed way back. So this is how they fill it in. Here's another. Whoops. Too fast. That was real fast. Okay, so here's another. And that's how it gets filled in. Now some of your steps, if you notice between the two, some of your steps might get buried, but then it'll erode out, or it'll just be a shortened step up. Now before leaving this, let me tell you, okay, I don't know all the details about what happened on the north part, but you all have probably heard some of that, which is that it was a contractor hired by FDOT. I don't know what the problems were. I know that Mr. Newsom has made some statements about disavowing that work and not being very pleased with that work. I am sure, as I'm standing here, that whatever those problems were, they will be corrected. They will be corrected. We're planning on not encountering those problems. Doesn't mean, it's a big construction problem. Doesn't mean there won't be a problem. But we're up here, the governments of the city of Flagler Beach and Flagler County are pledging to you that we're going to make it right. Oh, let me say something about the vegetation. We heard some comments. Many of the parcels the remnant parcels on the beach are only a rock revetment. Some actually have a little bit of dune, and some have a more substantial dune. The farther south you go, the tendency is you have more of a remaining dune. So the rock revetment, you got nothing at all, nothing to enjoy. Obviously this project will bring you a lot. But what if you have a dune that's got a substantial amount of existing native vegetation? It will not be removed. The contractor will not be permitted to remove existing stands of healthy native vegetation. So you don't have to worry about it getting scoured out or removed in some way. And again, that came from inquiries of owners telling us that this was a concern they had, just like the sea grapes and also the walkover issues. Okay, just real briefly on the sand, we're going to use a hopper dredge. That's the kind of machine that's used. The hopper scoops it up and brings it over close to shore, gets piped to the beach. It travels for that 10 miles, not about 9 miles in, and about a mile offshore, it'll start pumping it. It comes in a slurry, that is, they mix seawater with it so that it can actually move through the pipe with pressure, because solid sand won't move through a pipe. The new beach forms itself. After everything gets settled out, the beach sort of begins to adjust to its natural self, and the sand will be bleached by the sun. The construction, we want to get it done. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week thing. The project is going to move in about 1,000 to 1,500 feet increments. In other words, that will be the construction zone. They tend to do 200 to 700 feet a day in terms of rebuilding the dunes. So the project moves along quickly, and that is the intent. We want it to move along quickly and to complete itself so that we have a resilient beach and can resist storms. Okay, now, this is an excerpt out of a paper that was done for the Army Corps of Engineers. It's not our area. This is Duval County. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. And what this is showing is the difference between hurricane damage where there's a renourished beach and where there is not one. Now this is a comparison of Dora and Matthew. This is Jacksonville. Okay, this is not a renourished beach. So the storm, Dora, was able to ravage that coastline. This is a Matthew storm damage. You'll see there is damage. A lot of the dune is gone, but the structures are preserved. It provides a decent defense, is the point. It's better than no defense. We thank you for your cooperation. There's all our contact info. It's in your materials. You can jot it down from here. And again, we're very happy to take inquiries. And now what we want to do, since this is primarily for the benefit of the property owners, I know we have others here, and I'm glad we do. I'm glad there are other people that are interested. We've got a mic set up there, if you can see it. Anyone who has any questions from the property owners, just start lining up behind there and we'll just take them. We got the whole crew of professional people here to answer those questions. Any questions that you might have, happy to answer them.
I just have a kind of simple question. You have said that it's like a utility easement once you sign this paper, and on a utility easement, when they have the 5-foot right on either side of your property, as we do now, and 20 feet in the back, you cannot build on that property. So when we give you an easement, can we still rebuild or build or do walkovers? What kind of easement? I mean, in the contract that we signed, this needs to be clear stated that we can rebuild and keep our doing walkovers.
The document is clear, but I'll make it clear in these words.
Okay, please do.
You do not lose any right of use of your dune. You're not giving it away. We're not taking your property. Wait a minute. Okay. I'll answer your questions.
Okay.
Just be patient.
I will.
Sorry. So if you don't have a dune, if you don't have a walkover today, and we do this project, can you do a walkover later? Yeah, you just got to comply with permitting. You want a deck? You just got to comply with permitting. You are entitled to use your property. You can build those things that are permitted by the rules and by the regulations. Does that answer your question?
From the city, rules and regulations, or from the easement that we're signing?
No, the easement doesn't impose those restrictions. For instance, if you do walkover, you've got to go to DEP and you have to get a building permit from the city of Flagler Beach.
Right, okay.
Just like what you do today. Whatever you have to do today to build a deck or a walkover, you have to do after this project. Same rules are in effect.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Next person? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Basically, getting back to the first question, you will allow walkovers, decks, things of that nature. This property may possibly extend out, what, 100 feet of dry land?
As a dune,
Uh-huh.
it could.
Okay, so
I don't know about that. I don't know about that length. I'd have to talk to the coastal engineer to get a handle on that number.
is it in any way, shape, form, possibility of building a residence on this
No.
land? Okay, so this
So you would have the same, nothing, so in other words, the same comprehensive plan of the city of Flagler Beach, the same land development regulations would apply to your property after the dune is built as applied today. Unless, of course, the government, modifies them, which they're permitted to do.
doubtful. But, okay, how is this going to affect the taxes on this property?
Well, actually at this point in time, since Hurricane Matthew, there has not been a single arm's length transaction for the purchase of any of these remnants, the dune remnants. Now, I'm not talking about where the dune frontage is also owned by the owner on the west side of A1A. There hasn't been a single arm's length sale in, what is that, 2 years and 4 months? The only transactions that have occurred in that amount of time are 3 tax default type transaction, tax deed sales, and actually one of the properties actually is cheated to Flagler County because nobody would come in and pay the back taxes, so automatically it went to us. So right now you have, sorry, I'm just telling you what those facts are. You have virtually no property value in them if nobody is willing to buy them with the exposure to the hurricanes, right? I mean, I'm assuming that's why the market is chilled, because they used to, have I don't want to call it a robust trade, but there were lots of transactions relative to what I call dune remnants. Now, what will happen? Now to your question. Okay, I think you're probably being assessed a certain value. I don't know. I've seen some are $2,500. I don't know what they are, but their price is based on the selling market. Based on the selling market, it's not based on how much sand you have placed or not. It depends on what the market is. So if they start selling again, that'll set the value of your property.
Okay, now will it still be capped under the homestead provision, even though it's a separate property?
Do you own the property on the west side?
I do.
Okay, and it's under your homestead, right?
The west side is, but that, I'm not living on it. I don't know if it's homesteaded or not.
I can't tell you. That's a question for the property appraiser. My expectation is not.
Johnson here today?
My expectation is it's not, because the homestead applies to where you have your home, and that lot is getting the full, what is it, 50, I don't know what you're qualified or eligible for, but you're getting the whatever full homestead exemption that you're entitled to. Correct?
On the home itself, I believe so.
On your property.
I'm hoping so.
Well, you should, go by the property appraisers and make sure, or look at your tax bill, it'll tell you.
Okay, so, but as far as you know, it doesn't cover anything on the east side of the road.
I'm really not the person who has the authoritative answer is the property appraiser. I do not believe so.
Okay. And, oh, and the other thing you talked about was the vegetation.
Yes.
I'm right at 26th Street,
Okay.
busiest east-west other than 100. They stopped the work at 25th,
You mean the DOT work?
yeah. 26th, every time it rains, it's under 4 or 5 inches of water, the entire intersection, all the way north to my mailbox. They never put in a storm sewer there. But south of 26th, they leveled the dune off. The dunes used to go up and over. Well, from earlier talks, it seemed like, oh, they're not going to do that, but they did it.
Is that mic on?
Microphones, everybody
Yes,
here.
just get closer to the mic.
Talk closer to the mic.
It's on.
I'm not aware of that DOT construction work, but we've got a DOT representative and they're able to respond to that.
Yeah, and they did do some planting there, which,
Well, that's the post-construction of the road requires them to plant the beach grass in order to prevent erosion
makes sense.
of the sand. That's a standard construction practice required by the permitting agencies. But there is Mr. Ron Mead from the DOT, and he can answer your questions.
The section of A1A all through Flagler and even north Volusia, we never had any organized drainage system. Okay, how about, is that a little better? Yeah, that whole section of A1A, we've never had a traditional drainage system. It's just the water, we try to slope the road where it runs over on the shoulder, and we've never had a capturing system like a retention pond or anything like that. This new section that we built from, I guess, south 8th down to about south 23rd or 4th or 5th, we actually put a French drain in. So the water will drain to the center, and hopefully we won't have that problem there. Now where you're at, you're outside of that area, we can look at our slopes and everything else, but I mean, it's a natural.
Yeah, so like I say, the dune goes up on the east side, so the water can't run back to the
Right, now the only problem we have, if we don't have a high dune and the water piles in a certain area, guess what happens when it runs over the dune towards the ocean? It washes everything away. So what we almost have to have is a little bit of a tub effect, and then the water infiltrates in.
Well, unfortunately, right now, it's the entire 8 intersection and standing out from there.
Right. I can get with you, I'll give you my card, and we can look at it. Well, we'll try.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for property owners?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you, sir.
My name's William Stepnick, from Vero Beach. I used to live in Ohio, and I got stuck with this property like 30 years ago. I have one of those little lots east of A1A. I own nothing west of A1A. I didn't buy it. My wife's father did. This actually belongs to my daughters, but I pay the taxes year after year. And I already signed
Welcome, Dad.
All right. I know, but I already signed my easement. I think what you guys are doing is great. Is there any use? Does anybody want this property? I asked
I saw a hand go up. There's probably more value in it now that the Army Corps project.
Well, I asked the county, you know, I called about the taxes, and I said, you guys want it? You know, I'll give it to you.
Flagler County will take it.
No, they won't.
Mr. Chair, will you take the property? Yeah,
Do I get a tax write-off on my income tax?
you can deduct it.
All right, I'm gonna get his name. Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
So obviously, all of us got the forms that we need to fill out, and a lot of us are here in support of it. I do know that there's other people who don't live here full-time that will be in support of it. My question is, what about the people who, for instance, a neighbor of mine is flipping their house and they don't care? Are you going to take extra measures to get with them and help them understand why this is a big deal and why they should care?
our efforts do not end with this meeting. We are going to be working every single day till March 25th to gather all that we can. We're going to do some door-to-door visits. We're going to really, and that's obviously not going to work unless the person lives locally, but we're going to do those, and we're obviously using the information that a person can obtain about whether their neighbor has signed or not.
Okay.
So hopefully, in a combination of efforts, we'll be able to do that. And we're doing, a lot of public education. As I mentioned before, we've done a couple of radio broadcasts. It's brought up at every meeting of the City of Flagler Beach and of the County Commission. So, and the press is taking obviously a greater interest in it. So I think there'll be more stories on it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Now you should point out we have experience doing this. We did it on the north.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, before you answer, yes, Commissioner Hanson reminded me of something. We had to do the same thing for the north 12 miles. We had to get 200 private easements. We got all but 11 of the 200. That's a pretty good track record. We've done this before.
My name's Andy Montgomery. I live on Lake Shore. And I bought the property 25 years ago, 30 years ago from Miss Parker. And at that point in time, there were no restrictions. Anybody could buy it and build a dune walkover. But then they passed a law in building code that you had to, only the person across the street could buy it. So in reality, y'all made my land worthless, and they were going for $20,000 a piece in the heyday. I just had an offer of $10,000, and when the fellow went to City Hall to check and see if he could build a dune walk, not living next door, he was told no. So I'd like to be reimbursed for what y'all passed a law that in effect made my property worthless, and I don't have a good taste in my mouth for it. So I'd like for you to come purchase my property and let me recover some of that. And if you don't want to, then I probably won't participate.
Okay, well, yes, thank you. We didn't pass whatever law you're referring to. That's not something that the county is familiar with. The city manager is here. He's going to be making a couple of comments, and maybe he can address that question.
But I would have thought you would grandfather situations like that for people who don't. Now, the next person that purchases it, you can require them to comply. But
Right.
I had an offer in the last year for $10,000, and it fell through because of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day, or good evening. I don't live south of Flagler. I live north of Flagler, just at 23rd, Marina Bay, Flagler. Pardon. And we're victims, I feel, of what FDOT and the contractor and whatever did up there. This nor'easter we just had blew, I don't know how much sand over here. All you folks should go take a look and see what FDOT did to us. And my thought is, if they haul in sand, if it isn't coquina sand or some sand that doesn't blow around, you're going to have the same problem. We've got a hell of a mess up there. We can't keep our pool straight. We can't keep our parking lot clean. I filed a claim with FDOT, and the gentleman called me and told me, well, wind blows things. We're not responsible. Well, they're responsible. They hauled in this sand that is ill-suited for the purpose. Our grass is now a foot higher than it was because of the accretion. The sand blowing in, it just keeps raising it, raising it, raising it. What's going to be done? Nobody calls me. I can't get any calls. I can't get any calls from anyone.
Well, actually, the office for that is at the old SunTrust Bank building. That's what I suggest you go. I can't address your particular problem, but I do know that the potential is there for FDOT to use the sand that we're bringing in on our project.
And how's that going to help? Does that sand doesn't blow around? The stuff you're going to use doesn't blow around?
Well, we can't stop nature, but we're going to have a more, it's a sand that is compatible with our native sand.
So what was the stuff that FDOT used? Can somebody here from FDOT can tell us what they use?
I don't know. I can't
FDOT
answer.
here? Isn't FDOT here?
FDOT's here.
So what'd you do to us?
Well, let me tell you what we
Wasn't
did. Let me tell you what we did to you. We spent $22 million to rebuild the road after Hurricane Matthew.
Yep.
Okay? And the sand we used was in coordination with our permitting agencies, which includes DEP. And that's the sand that they spec'd out. Department of Environmental Protection, state agency. So that's the sand that we used. And is it a native sand? No. But it met their color and all of the characteristics that they required. That was the same sand that DEP pumped after or brought in after Matthew and pre-Irma. And I know exactly what you're talking about with the blowing sand. That's when we tried that black silk fence to try to control the blowing, and it was somewhat effective, but it's very short term. It falls apart and flaps around. The next thing that we're trying down in North Volusia and Ormond, we're putting up what we call snow fence or sand fence. Have you seen the wood slats? Have you all seen that? It's up in Marineland. There's some up that area, and we're doing that there. And I've actually been in coordination with Larry back there, City Manager Larry Newsom, and we do have plans for that. I've even talked to the folks at Beverly Beach, and I'm coordinating with them. But I'm very aware of what you're talking about with that blowing white sand, because I've also lived it.
So are we going to get compensated to repair our grass once this stuff finally stops?
While I work for the department, I'm not in the claims portion of it, but well, I'll give you my card and I'll work with you, but I can't make any promises, to that effect. But we're trying to control the sand.
It isn't working. That's all I can tell you. It's not working.
Well, I can tell you, sir, I can tell you this. I don't want to get in the middle of your issue, but Mother Nature will do things that you can't expect, and you just got to do the best you can to recover. And sometimes we all got to pitch in and roll up our sleeves and just do the work we need to do as a community. That's my simple response.
Well,
Any other questions? Any other questions?
That doesn't clean up the
Promoters?
sand.
Any other questions? Non-property owners who have questions? Any other questions? Can you come up to the mic?
Good afternoon. I
Yes,
live
sir.
on Smith Creek and not the ocean, but
Yes,
I have a lot of
intercoastal.
observations, being that I do use the ocean. One of the things I've noticed, actually before Matthew and now afterwards, even the FDOT work is being completed, is the revetment seems to be, in my personal opinion as a non-engineer, inadequate before the sand replenishment starts. There's places where it's like 6 to 8 feet below the level of A1A. And my concern is, I would imagine today, if you took a fire hose and squirted that subgrade, you'd undermine A1A again. So you've got a vulnerable situation between now and the revetment, and also when the revetment, or excuse me, when the sand is placed, if that washes away, like in 2005 when we had 4 hurricanes up in St. Augustine, you're going to have a situation again, in my opinion, that looks just like that, to tear up the work you've already done. Secondly, I saw something engineering-wise that you showed up on the screen, and it was where the property owners don't sign the easement. It appears that the way you're going to plan that is you're going to create a huge, I'm trying to think of riptide, because the water's going to be driven into that little area where you've got tapered. It's going to go out like crazy, and you're going to create a huge public safety problem if you do taper it like that. Again, in my opinion, as a non-engineer.
You're absolutely correct as to that point. We're trying to do everything we can to avoid that by educating the public as much as we can.
Right. So I know the revetment issue is being addressed by FDOT. I don't know where that stands, but I just wanted to bring it up at a venue like this because we don't want our friends that own restaurants and whatnot on A1A to have to revisit this same thing that we saw during Matthew. And my concern is that it may happen again if that doesn't continue to get shored up.
Absolutely. That's in our interest the city of Flagler Beach and Flagler County that we don't want to leave ourselves unnecessarily exposed. I can tell you this, I can have the coastal engineer address this in more detail, but the dunes that are designed are being designed from an engineering standpoint to be resilient. I mean, not to be able to withstand a huge category type hurricane, but to withstand what we need to do between declared storms.
Yeah, the only reason I bring this up as well is because I was in St. Augustine during that 2005 period.
Yes.
We had those 4 or 5 storms come up. And that was after the beach replenishment. And I went out there during one of the storms on the beach and saw each wave come in and take 5-6
Yes.
feet of sand because it hadn't had a chance to densify after the replenishment, and it just took it. It took it right back in a year.
Yes.
So again, just bringing up some concerns that we address these things before they get covered up, and it's cheap to do it now. So,
Thank
just a
you.
heads up. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Scott, right?
Yes.
Hey, Ron. Yeah, I'll give you an update on that. I'll tell everybody else. Scott has brought this up to us, several months ago, probably longer, Scott, right?
About a year and a half.
It's about a year and a half, but I mean, as far as like that time we met on 19, because what Scott's talking about is the existing coquina rock up around South 19. You can look to the north, and there appears to be more rock than if you turn around and look to the south. And we are working with our resources, and we're attempting to get rock placed, but between now and when this Army Corps and Flagler County project starts. So I'll stay in touch with you, but I expect to see some action within the next few months for about a 2-block area in the worst spot.
I'm sure we all thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome.
Yes, and thank you very much, Ron. Do you have another question?
Yes, sir. So I'm a property owner, and I understand the easement, all that goes into that, and I support that. I'm going to support that. What I just don't understand is why there's a waiver. I don't understand this.
It's a federally required form. We're not using condemnation procedures. We're not taking anybody's property. So the federal government wants to make sure that if it does the work, you're not going to turn around and sue them for taking their property. It's a waiver. It's a waiver of your ability, to claim those kinds of damages of taking your property. Eminent domain.
Yep. Okay.
Now I see Ms. Johnson, you're here. Would you care to make? You've been listening to this. Would you care to make any comments to the public? She's our tax collector.
My name is Suzanne Johnston. I'm the Flagler County tax collector, and I'm not sitting up here with these government people. I am a Flagler Beach girl. My family moved here in 1960. I've probably lived here longer than any of y'all, and I grew up here. In fact, I had the very first bikini in Flagler Beach. When I was growing up, we had hurricanes. I can remember jumping off of the steps because the bottom steps were gone. But the main thing that was different was we had a sandbar. Every time it was low tide, we'd swim out to the sandbar. It was just a couple of inches deep. I hope all this sand ends up building us a sandbar like it was. But one of the best things that I hear is we're going to try this. We're going to try that. At least if something doesn't work, maybe they'll try something else. And don't fuss at the DOT man over here about the dune walkovers floating off. I've done that for all of us. When you think about an easement, it just gives somebody the right to go on your property. Without that, it's pure trespassing. If the city of Flagler Beach wanted to put a water line on your property, They need you to sign an easement. No different. If Florida Power and Light needed to run a line to your backyard to put up a light, they need an easement. So an easement isn't going to upset me. My property is up on the north side of the city. I can hardly wait until we're able to get started up there. And my neighbors all need to be signing, otherwise I could lose my property. I could lose my condo. And let me show you, just like Al ended up showing you on a graph, here we are. Mr. Chichuli sitting over here. He owns this lot. Here is Beth. She owns here. And I own in the middle. Now, if I want to really be ugly and not sign something, look at what happens. They've got sand, and I don't have sand. Where do you think Mother Nature is going to come? So if your neighbor doesn't sign, you're going to be at risk. So you need to encourage them. It's just as important for your neighbor. The more people in the line that sign, that stronger that chain is going to be. I encourage every one of you to sign. It is the best thing. And look at it, we don't have to pay. The city of Flagler Beach can't afford it. $17.5 million. They get $4 million a year in property taxes. That's all the city gets. If, let's see, the county ends up getting $76 million. Who in here wants your property taxes to go up to pay for something? Nobody, not a single hand. Somebody's going to pay, not us. So there's no reason for you not to sign this easement. The wording may not be perfect. I've fussed for all of y'all about the wording. The very first word said perpetual. Well, that's about stupid. If you ask me, you give something, you sign an easement, it is forever. But I was told they hold the purse strings, they get the wording the way they want. You know, and you think 50 years, well, I'm 70 years old. I won't even know where Flagler Beach is in 50 years. But is there anybody in here that really has concerns? Does everybody in here that needs to sign an easement, do you plan on signing your easement? Yes, and I hope that you do so tonight. The sooner it's done, the sooner it can get started, and then they can get up to the north end of the city. I'm right there where the seawall stops. I'm at risk. I'm at one of these looking things. So, thank all of y'all very much. You can always call my office if you have questions about this. But let me tell you, if you're calling that Shore's phone number, always do it in writing instead. That way you've got a track record. You can say, look what you told me 10 years ago. I do everything in writing. Thank y'all.
Title company, Coast Title is back there. If any of you want to, they've got notaries. They can do all of that execution right now. Please take advantage of that. Doesn't mean it's the only time you can do it, but if you know you're going to do it, get it done. Actually, by having more people sign, it tends to create a momentum, and more people will be interested in joining along. There's also food in the back if any of you want to nibble. Thank you very much. Appreciate your cooperation. Thank you.